Zone. We welcome in Ole Miss insider Jake Thompson on 3 Sports, and he joins us on the Farm Bureau Insurance guest line. Jake, do you like English peas and mayonnaise combined together?
No, I can't say that I do. I like them separately. I really enjoy English peas, but I cannot say I've ever had them together
Okay.
in anything.
All right. Were you mad at Lane Kiffin when he finally made the decision to leave Ole Miss and go to LSU?
No, I mean, I understand why people would be mad. I mean, I had him pegged, way back when they hired him to maybe 2 years, kind of rejuvenate himself, see what happens, get Ole Miss maybe back on track. And then this was his way in. Ole Miss was the team that took the chance on him, brought him back in, quote unquote, to the room after being kind of outside for a while in Boca. But then, of course, COVID hits, and that kind of changes things. And then NIL happens here in Mississippi, one of the first ones right after Florida, and he figured that out, and a lot of others hadn't, and he found success, and that snowballed. And then that kept him here for a little while longer because Ole Miss and the Grove Collective kind of got ahead of it. We're ahead of it till everybody else is now seemingly caught up to level, it seems, at least the Blue Bloods and the top program. So that kind of altered things. So then, of course, once Ole Miss became the answer to the trivia question of this is now his longest job he's ever had, which I think in December 2019, nobody would have thought that would be the answer. It felt like he was settled here, family was here, all this and that. But somebody told me sitting post game after the Kentucky game this season or this past season, sat there, looked at me in the press conference and said, somebody high up said, we need Florida to win this year. So they knew that there was going to be those overtures again, that he was probably looking. So, and this was week 2 of the season. And so that fear and concern was already there of having to fight off teams or convince Kiffin to stay, which is really what it ended up being. They were fighting to keep him to stay, and he didn't want to stay. And they just finally, everybody kind of threw their hands up and said, let's just call it, leave it. And he quit, he didn't put up the fight anymore to stay, left. And we know what's happened in the last month and a half is, Ole Miss kept going and got as farther than they've ever gotten in program history, modern history for sure, and to the Fiesta Bowl and the semifinals, and really a play away from playing for it all. So, it's hard to get mad at him, frustrated maybe just from our professional standpoint of having to deal with all this. But no, I mean, there's no mad, at least for me.
Jake Thompson on 3 Sports, Ole Miss insider on the Out of Bounds show. Was it the craziest time for you as far as professionally covering Ole Miss?
Yeah, that's probably the strangest, you could say just 48 hours really from the Egg Bowl to that Sunday. I guess maybe a little longer, that's 72 hours, that I've had, just the nation centered on Ole Miss, and not even really about what they've been doing on the field all year. It was more about what one man and what Chancellor and 180 were going to do inside of a house in the middle of the night with everybody watching. It was just fascinating and strange, and I guess,
Were you there?
A lot of people yeah, I'm here.
No. Were you outside the Chancellor's house?
I did not. We didn't know that where they were camped out until after the fact when we saw Dellinger's tweet and a bunch of others. We
Gotcha.
were all kind of sitting there waiting for a press release or something. We were all too busy hitting refresh on the inboxes and our sources and everything. But it was, it was. I guess it feels like it was the only way it was going to end in a Kiffin situation. I guess everybody's kind of said that now. Maybe hindsight's 2020, but. I will say it's been the most surreal, or it was the most surreal 6 years because, everybody knew of Kiffin, knew of his past reputations, his coaching styles, his history. And then for 6 years, you're sitting in a room talking to this man, asking him questions every day, every week. So it was kind of the strangest, almost like it wasn't real in terms of my professional career, 6 years, and now I'm snapped out of it. And it feels like we're just kind of covering a normal football program again with a normal football coach, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does make sense. Jake Thompson, Ole Miss insider on the Farm Bureau Insurance guest line. We are the Out of Bounds Show, 105.9 The Zone, ESPN. We're brought to you by Mills Contracting, general contractors for your next commercial project, building, assisted living facilities, you name it. Mills Contracting in Gluckstadt. We're live in the Bank Plus studio. All right, Jake, what about, let's see, is it weird now covering normal compared to Kiffin's crazy and his persona and the fact that he was the most active college football coach on social media?
Yeah, it is. It's, I guess, weird and having to adapt, I guess, backwards, so to speak, or regressing back to normal. Where you have a coach that just hits the shark button or a Trinidad flag, symbol button on Twitter, and that's all he does. And as opposed to a coach who would put up, life-changing advice, scriptures, self-help book covers, and then troll the rest of the afternoon after doing all that in the morning, and just putting up photos, and you have to figure out, well, what airplane hangar is this? What state is this? Is he really actually there? Is that an old photo? Who's he? Or, just trying to figure all that out. It's nice to have to go back to just a football coach in Pete Golding, who really, the man just wants to be on a practice field or in a football stadium on Saturdays and coaching a game or his guys. Over the last month of this, usually you hire a coach, you have a press conference, you don't see him again till spring practice or whenever. You don't see him for a while. Well, Ole Miss, you fire a coach, you hire a new coach. A week or two later, he's playing in a college football playoff game. Wins that one, Sugar Bowl. Wins that Fiesta Bowl. So Pete Golding has been thrusted into the spotlight and having to do things I think he wasn't expecting to do right off the bat. And so he's, on the job training as well in terms of the media presence and all that. So I think it's been an adjustment for all of us, but it's nice to just have a coach that when we've asked him questions, we kind of get straight answers, or he'll say, "Hey, I don't know." And, as we've seen, he'll tell you like it is. He's just a good old guy from Louisiana who played at Delta State and has coached all around the Southeast and other places, and just wants to talk X's and O's. So from that standpoint, it's been very refreshing.
Okay. Jake Thompson on the Out of Bounds show. So Pete Golding and Austin Thomas and Walker Jones and others have been able to keep the train on the tracks with Ole Miss having the number 2 transfer portal class. How excited are you? Do you believe that they have addressed all their need, or I don't know if anybody addresses all of them. Have they addressed most of their needs through the portal, Jake?
Yeah, I think so. You don't have any of those major splash signings, which, that's not a bad thing. They went and covered what they needed to cover. They got some good additions on the defensive line and some good edge players and a few defensive tackles, including Otis from Colorado, who's bounced around, and Jordan Renault from Alabama. And I think they're really high on Jonathan Maldonado out of Nevada, and the Baylor player they got as well, and on top of Blake Purchase, the Oregon edge. So they really liked all the defensive guys they've added. Offensively, I think they were, trying to figure out what they were going to have to need. Obviously, they lost 2 guys to the portal, and Caden Lee and Winston Watkins. Watkins, everybody was kind of the worst kept secret. We knew he was probably heading to LSU to follow Lane. Caden Lee he's in the portal, but he's telling people he's waiting to see what Trinidad's going to do, or what they will let Trinidad do, I guess I should say. If not, it feels like he's following Austin Simmons to Missouri. So offense, there were some questions, but keeping Lacey helped. They've added some running backs there. They've got a decent wide receiving room here, and they've added a couple of good guys. So I think he did a solid job in his first, I guess, official transfer cycle as head coach in filling needs and keeping rooms together. And if you sat there and told people after Lane Kiffin left that you would just lose TJ Dottery, Prince Will, and Watkins and Devin Harper, and if you only lost those 4, I think everybody would sign off and say Pete and Ole Miss did a great job keeping the room together, keeping the team together, and also bringing in, as you said, it's a top transfer class.
Jake Thompson on 3 Sports, Ole Miss Insider, talking Pete Golding, Lane Kiffin, Ole Miss football, coming off their best season in the history of the program. And he joins us on the Farm Bureau Insurance guest line. Did you go to the Egg Bowl?
I did.
Were you there when Kiffin confronted Ben Garrett?
I didn't. I was inside seated. I didn't see the initial part, but then I was seated between them and the press conference, so there was no avoiding any of what happened in the actual press conference. I was smack in the middle of all that, but no, I had already gone inside and missed the confrontation out on the field.
Did Ben tell you it happened before they went at it again in the press conference? How did it play out?
I know. We all saw it on Twitter instantly. I can't remember the guy's name. The Outkick reporter who posted it. We all were sitting in there, and the video popped up before either of them had made it to the room.
Okay. All right. So so you already knew when Kiffin confronted Ben Garrett on the field in Starkville at Davis Wade, you already knew it by the time Ben got to the press conference because you saw it on Twitter?
Yeah, we were all watching the video. It kind of popped up on each other's feed like ducks in a row, and so we were all aware of what had just happened.
All right, did they go at it in the press conference?
Kiffin, I'm trying to go back now and recollect it, but I think Kiffin said something to I think Trey Wallace is his name, the Outkick reporter. He asked a question, kind of teeing up the whole situation, asked about it without asking about it, so to speak, and that kind of revved Kiffin up a little bit, and Kiffin made one of his quips, and Ben, knowing him as well as I do, wasn't going to let him not say his defense, I guess, so to speak, and then that is when kind of the TED talk of the subject of a hoe and what he meant and all that just happened. And I'm just sitting, and I was in the front row of the small little room, and they were both kind of yelling back and forth between me. I was just the guys stuck in the crossfire of it, and then they finally moved on. And
were people trying to calm them down, or did they just let them rip?
Kyle Campbell, SID here, he kind of interjected and said, let's move on. And that was when Kiffin threw out the I don't even know who you are or whatever the shot was. And so from there it kind of moved on. I think maybe it was brought up again, but from there it kind of had shifted to just what's Kiffin going to do in the Egg Bowl itself.
Okay, was Ben laughing or was it intense?
No, it was intense. There was no at least in that moment it was intense. There was no I'm sure, he didn't really laugh much about it the rest of that day because then, of course, it blew up on Twitter, and everybody, of course, had their opinions on Twitter. So
right.
It took a day or two for everybody to kind of move on, and I don't even think they really moved on. I believe Kiffin was texting Ben throughout that weekend, and I think was up until maybe a couple of days ago still texting him about what, I don't know. I just know Ben's told me they were texting.
They're still texting, right? Almost 2 months later?
Yeah, I feel like Lane's been the initiator in that. In whatever they're texting, but yeah, they have been up until maybe a few days ago.
Oh my God. I mean, to be a top 5 coach in college football, he still operates like a senior in high school female. It's incredible. I mean, he's brilliant, and yet he's a 9-year-old all in one kind of wrapped it. He's genius. He is. He's brilliant.
I'll say this, and maybe it goes back to if I'm mad or frustrated at the start of this, but I think I wrote on a message board when we were writing out what LSU is going to have to pay on some of these players' buyouts for the rev share that had already signed, and just add on to what the buyout is of Kiffin, and I think Charlie Weiss, they have a buyout they got to pay. It's just it just adds to the absurdity of the whole situation of a head coach, Lane Kiffin specifically, of a college football playoff team where he's been trying to get his whole career a chance to play for a national title.
Right.
Says Ole Miss isn't good enough, can't do it. I've been told by Nick Saban, apparently, as he said a day or two ago, that LSU is the place to be. Then has to sit and watch Ole Miss be a play away from playing for it all, and then a program in Indiana who's never sniffed anything good at football win a national title. But you feel like Ole Miss can't do that too, and that's just the most absurd thing of all this.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Trinidad is going to win his injunction in the state of Mississippi. Trinidad Chamblas, your fantastic quarterback, one of the most talented guys at that position in the country. You've got an Ole Miss judge in the thing, so I guess it's just a formality.
It's very John Grisham-esque is what I've been telling people.
Yeah.
It just fits all that right there.
Okay, but when they win that, can the NCAA file it in federal court, or do you know?
No, because there's some, and then Tom Mars has been tweeting out as, layman's terms for all of us who don't understand it, but there's something that keeps the NCAA from being able to move it to federal court, and I think it was something he tweeted maybe the last Friday, the day they filed it, and I'd have to go back and find it, but there's something that says once they can't move it or ask to move it out of state to federal because of something. What that is, I know I'm not being helpful there, but there's something about the NCAA having institutions in each state that makes it to where it can stay a state case. So once they rule in favor and grant the injunction, restraining order, whatever they want to call it, the theory is that will hold through the football season, and then the lawsuit itself wouldn't get settled until late January, February, theoretically after the national title game, and then it wouldn't matter anyway.
Okay. Okay. So you expect Trinidad Chamblas to start Labor Day weekend?
I do. I don't think you, especially for Ole Miss, who has been on the opposite end of Tom Mars about a decade ago, I don't think you hire him and expect to lose against the NCAA. So I think they felt good if they've had to go down that route that they would get him on the field in the fall.
All right. So no talk of NFL. This is all about him coming back.
I think he's going to come back. That obviously that became an option, a potential, as well as he played and kept playing in the postseason. But I think, given everything and what he may make at Ole Miss as opposed to what he might make and then have to fight to stay on the roster in the NFL this coming fall, I think he'll play here one more year and try to boost that stock. And if he does, all the talking heads are saying that it's him and Arch at the initial way too early, Heisman front runners. So if he comes back, he's going to have Ole Miss in a good spot, and I think himself in a good spot for the 2027 draft.
So Caden Lee comes back if this is announced in the next couple. When is the announcement expected from the Ole Miss judge? And when it does happen and Trinidad gets cleared, do you expect Caden Lee to get out of the portal and join Ole Miss? Go back to Ole Miss.
That's what we've all been told, was that that's what this whole thing was, and he was just protecting himself. If Trinidad's not back and he can go somewhere, it would not shock me in the slightest if he still ends up going to Missouri, because him and Austin Simmons were really good friends, really tight. They kind of did everything together that you saw him around town. And his post he put up, the farewell that he did over the weekend, it just read like a kid that wasn't going to be like, oh, nope, I'm going to come back. Sorry, ignore that. So it would not surprise me in the slightest if Caden still heads up to Columbia and plays with his buddy. Okay.
I just realized that, according to one of our listeners, you helped me here, Jake Thompson on 3 Sports, Ole Miss Insider. Is Ole Miss ranked 20th on 3 as far as their portal class?
Yeah, on 3 does. It's where they count coming in and coming out. They don't just do coming in. So I believe if you just did coming in, they would be up there where you saw them or where you listed them. But because of the coming out and the players that were ranked that left, I think that alters the algorithm, so to speak. And 247, I think, and others just count or grade or rank the coming in. So that's why Ole Miss is so high on 1 and not as high on 3.
Okay, and what's the bigger loss, Princeville or Daugherty?
I think Princeville. Both did not have great games in the Fiesta Bowl, and I know that's just a game, but I think you were counting on Princeville taking that step and being a bigger force on the line than he already was this year. He led you in key defensive stats. So I think that is a loss, but I believe they feel in the building, which obviously you should feel this way if you're going and trying to find guys to replace what you lost, that they like what they brought in to replace them. Now, may it take a couple guys and replace by committee? Maybe, possibly. But you've also still got, Sunturn Perkins and coming back, and you've got Cam Franklin coming back that had a good second year. So, there's players there, but I do feel like if you had to rank of the ones they lost, Princeville would be at the top. But a major loss, I don't think they're viewing it as a major loss.
Okay. And if for some reason something happens with Trinidad, it's going to be Walker Howard with Deuce Knight learning another year, right?
No, I think it'd be Deuce Knight. If you ask me. Now, obviously we will know in about 2 months when we're on the practice field if there is no Trinidad out there. But I believe they'll at least let Deuce, fight it out in the spring. I don't think we'll have a head coach in Pete Golding that will kind of string us along on these weird QB battles. I think Pete will tell us, straight up who it is. But no, I think Deuce would be at least initially in March, the guy, and then Walker behind him.
Okay. And then,
I think Ole Miss is hoping they don't have to sort that out.
Okay. And the 2 wide receivers y'all rated Syracuse, is that right?
Yeah. They got a guy from Daryl Gill out of Syracuse and Jonte Cook, who I think also maybe spent some time at Texas.
Okay.
So yeah, the 2 guys, 2 big receivers are out of Syracuse.
My man, you did a good job today. I appreciate you. We'll talk soon, okay?
I appreciate it. Talk to y'all again.
Jake Thompson on 3 Sports, Ole Miss Insider on the Farm Bureau Insurance Guest Line. The show today is brought to you by the wood-fired pizzas at Taste Italian Kitchen in the Renaissance.